What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte, and we are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Stand Against Evil is about to enter its third season, and I can't think of a better night to kick things off than October 31st. That's right. This Halloween, the show returns on IFC to masterfully ride the line between Scooby-Doo and Dawn of the Dead, or The Exorcist, if you will. If you aren't watching this show, that's crazy to me. But don't worry, you've got just enough time to catch up on Hulu before the premiere. In the meantime, I'm thoroughly psyched because back on the Build stage once again to tell us all about the latest season, the always awesome Stan, the man himself, John C. McGinley is in the house. How about that? Come on. I mean, come on. It's John C. McGinley. Very excited. All right. We're going to bring him out in just a second, but before we do, I believe we have a teaser for the upcoming season, so let's go ahead and run that clip.
Dude! I'm not home.
Claire left the portal open, and now the land of the dead is inhabiting the land of the living.
If I become a vampire, can I still eat Pop-Tarts?
Willard's Mill has been on our radar for a while.
Hey! Why did you bite me?
This isn't about you.
Stop resisting!
A stand is where? Oh my God! I'm already moving stone! Hi, how are you?
And wrestle.
Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, John C. McGinley right here. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how about that trailer? My goodness,
That's pretty insane.
That's an insane trailer. I mean, well, for an insane show in the best way possible, right?
Look, if you're on long enough, if you're lucky to be on a show long enough, like Scrubs was on for 9 years. And now this is going on year 3. And as one of the producers on the show, if you have the wherewithal, if you're still interested, if you're not jaded to it yet, if it's still a challenge, which Stand Against Evil is, what you get to do is you get to go back over the first 2 seasons and the approach isn't what could we do better, it's how can we improve on this with the same budget, with the same desperately finite amount of time. What can we do that we haven't done yet? Yeah. If you care to look back, and that's a pain, and you could just keep cranking, but we looked back in the first couple of seasons, and we wanted to make the monsters a little scarier, not to cannibalize the jokes, which is an easy casualty of making, as you were suggesting, if Stan operates somewhere in the middle between The Exorcist and Scooby-Doo, in other words, Scooby-Doo's funny, but the monsters are largely declawed, and The Exorcist is really scary, and you can't drop a joke. So somewhere in the middle there is An American Werewolf in London, and that's kind of the gold standard, where the werewolves are really scary, but then Griffin can drop a joke, and it's really funny. And Stan lives in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah, you guys tap dance on that line. I mean, it is so much fun to watch. And you bring up a great point about, for me, as a professional consumer of television and film, like season 3s typically are really special seasons, I feel like, because it is that point in time where you've got a couple under your belt, everyone's starting to hit their stride, you do start to reevaluate things, and was there a sense of that even to the point when you're on set, you guys are looking around, looking at ways, how do we do this just a little bit, how do we crank, or is it all a lot of
Not
homework?
Really,
it's all homework.
Television has to be, because it's so fast, and Stan is even faster than fast. We shoot
fast, yeah.
8 episodes in 5 weeks. And the only way to do that, so in other words, Scrubs, which was also a half hour of television is about 21 minutes and 35 seconds, right around in there. Yeah. And that's a lot, that's really fast. And so we shoot all 8 episodes down in Atlanta in 5 weeks. So the only way to do that is something called cross-boarding. So the scenes where you and I are on stage in episodes 1, 3, and 7. We're shooting them all this morning, or this afternoon rather. We're going to shoot all. We'll shoot all your singles from episodes 1, 3, and 7. We'll shoot a master, and then we'll shoot all your coverage, and then we'll come over here. And so that's either great or horrible. It's great if you and I rehearse all 8 episodes like a play, so that you know, I'm making this up, but you know that your aunt has a heart attack between episodes 5 and 7, and you're going to be impacted by that in the story, your character's aunt. And so that you have to factor that into, even though we're shooting this all this morning, you have to factor in your loss. And then I put the bomb in the camera, and it went off in episode 5, and now we're back here in episode 7, and it didn't go off. How is he different in this episode? How is he not completely, thinking about the bomb that didn't go off and still trying to be cool? But
that's fascinating.
And that's a different guy than episode 1.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like
we're shooting it all this morning.
You're mentally spinning so many plates at once and keeping them all afloat. I imagine that's a huge team effort. Like, I know you're big on that preparation and big on that homework.
If the actors come in and they've rehearsed all 8 episodes like a play by themselves, because we don't have money to bring everybody into a rehearsal space in Los Angeles. It's not that kind of party. But the actors have to have at least rehearsed or embraced whatever their arc is and whatever the story arc of the season is prior to coming down to Atlanta. Then we can go. Because if we have to fill you in and remind you of the stakes between what you're playing for between episodes 5 and 8, we're dead.
That's pretty good, especially considering where you guys go in episode 8 last season.
Where do you see where we go in episode 8 this year?
I can't wait, man. I've seen episode 1 this year, and that blew me away, just that alone, because Dana almost painted himself a little bit into a corner at the end of season 2. So I was really excited to see how we'd kind of get out of there, and I was blown away by the way in which he maneuvered the story back and sets up season 3. What was your reaction when you got a look at 301 and you were like, this is how he did it? Like,
I thought it was really, for the uninformed, what happens in the finale of the second season is the portal to hell is left open, and we're pretty much at the apocalypse.
Yes.
And so the first episode of season 3 is called Hell is What You Make It. And this is so esoteric and so wildly ambitious for a horror comedy, a 21-minute and 35-second horror comedy. And what Dana does is he makes the 2 protagonists, my character Stan and Janet Varney's character Evie, they have to embrace their own personal hells. And if they can chart a course through this tricky landscape of their own personal hells, they get to come back to this world. Yeah. And I read it, and I just thought it had so much spine, because what Dana could have easily done was the TV convention of somebody bumping their head and having amnesia, somebody waking up from a bad dream, and all of that never really even happened. But Dana owned it and made the characters chart this course through their own hell. I couldn't believe it. And so I was thrilled when we got 301, and then when we chopped it together, it came out.
Yeah, exactly. There were so many other ways, easy ways out that he did not take. Even just the device of time travel, which he already employed. He could have just gone back in time, did all these different things.
Right.
Like he could have, but the way he chose to do it was fantastic. We saw so much in season 2 about Stan, what the lengths he'll go to prevent loss, to undo loss. We see him on his knees, for crying out loud, at one point in season 2. I remember that moment of just like, I don't think I've never seen Stan, and I don't think Stan's ever done this. Like,
he's never been on his knees.
He's never, right? Like, that's the way I interpreted that moment. I was like, this dude's never been on his knees before, and it gave so much weight to that single moment. When you reach that point, I think of all those heavy moments amongst the comedy, and now I find out that you've got to do these things out of sequence, back to back. Is that something that you personally relish as an actor? Forget the preparation, just having to flick that switch from 2 to 11 like that and go from moment to moment.
It's a really good question, and for those who've seen Stan and those who have not, it's Archie Bunker fighting witches. Yes, is exactly. Kind of the log line. But in the Archie Bunker archetype, we also have a damaged protagonist. We have a really wounded guy like Archie. And in order to make him not just some random offender of all, we had to ground him in something. And so when I was originally sent all 8 episodes 3 years ago, I said to Dana, he then came out to the house, and I said, you wrote this, and you're missing, you put it on the page, I didn't. And I have to tell you something you're missing, something you're not mining, you're not excavating. And I said, you're not digging into this guy's loss. He's wounded. And I said, we got to explore this guy's wounds. How is he going to reconcile this? Can he reconcile it? Is he capable? Does he want to? And he promised me that we would dig into that. And he's nimble enough, cerebrally, and as a craftsman, to have recrafted some of the scripts to include Stan's authentic emotions. Yeah. And when we go to these Comic-Cons, like we'll go to one this afternoon in New York, and we were the one in San Diego for the last couple of years. When we do these audience engagements, these Q&As with hundreds of people, hopefully thousands, the one thing they connect to is when Janet and I are digging into something and trying to wrap our head around something genuinely emotional. Because, look, I can drop a joke, and Dana can turn a joke.
She's great.
Janet can turn a joke in her sleep. Yeah. Dana, the guy who created the series, ran the Simpsons writer's room for 10 years, so he can craft a joke this second. And so turning jokes is not the hard part. It's finding why we'll tolerate this equal opportunity offender. Like with Archie, it was Edith's love. It was Gene Stapleton's love for Carol O'Connor, which bullnosed the corners for Archie. Because if Edith loved Archie, then there was something there, because she was so genuinely astonishing. And so if she loved them, there must be something there. And for Stan, he has to try to right his ship. He has to try to find out why his wife died and why he was fired, all of which happens in the first 45 seconds of the premiere episode. Yeah. And now we have to follow this guy who's wounded. And I love seeing what men and women do when they're wounded emotionally. He's not physically wounded, he's emotionally wounded and spiritually just vacant. Yeah. And so now how are you going to fill that cup? Or are you? Right. Can you?
Right. And that's kind of where we are in season 3 is like, what's going to happen to that cup? Like, what's he going to do with that? And I imagine that was, so you guys, you've edited them all. They're all ready to go. Have you seen all 8 of them? Of course, I imagine as a producer, you've a couple of times you've seen them.
Yes.
And so was it exciting taking them in these different places here on season 3 for you? Were places specific? Did you have a similar conversation with Dana, or after that first conversation, it's just a matter of nudging left to right, keeping things here and there?
No, Dana, to his eternal credit, when he hears a good idea, he's not afraid to steal it and take credit for it. And that's his line, not mine. And so it's a very collaborative place. It's not, you don't have to, watch your P's and Q's, and you're allowed to come in with a great idea. And we like the actor to say what's on the page for the first 2 or 3 takes, and then they can bring and sprinkle their sauce. But because the scripts are so good, and the ensemble is populated by incredibly talented improvisational actors, we have to bring them back to say what's on the page first, because there's a desperately finite amount of time to shoot stuff. And then what happens is we in editing, we have to make these almost Sophie's choices of editing choices, because actors will come in and vamp a whole scene. But like I told you, it's 21 minutes and 35 seconds. There's an A, B, and C, and sometimes a D story. Something's got to go. Yeah. And so if you start vamping this genius riff, this Robin Williams riff about something, it may be redirected to next season. Yeah. We may steal it for next season, but there's an A, B, and C story that have to be served.
In 21 and a half, 22 minutes.
Yes.
And that's the other thing that's so great about the show is I feel like a lot of things that we get today to watch or binge or what have you, there's a lot of great content, a lot of long content, sometimes content that feels like it's long just for the sake of being long. This show is so economical. It's so, everything that happens on that screen is happening for a reason. It's either giving you a laugh or telling you a beat about the story. And
I think
that's
born out of Dana being in running the writer's room of The Simpsons, where there's 14 or 15 writers, all of whom went to Harvard, all of whom were editors of the Lampoon, and they're all in that writers' room for The Simpsons, and it's super competitive, and your stuff has to rise, and they'll cherry pick ideas and storylines. And Rob Cohen, who directed all 8 episodes, was a writer on that staff with Dana, and he directed all 8 episodes of Stan this year. And so it's the piece goes like this.
Did Dana, do you know, forgive my ignorance here, did Dana ever write a book about his time on The Simpsons or anything like that? Because I just read one by Mike Rice, who was on The Simpsons, and that was great. And I'd love to hear Dana's
That's the only book, but Dana's got a million stories.
Exactly, man. I'd love to tap into that and hear
They're not boring.
Yeah, I can. We're going to turn it over to the audience in a second. There's so much I wanted to talk to you about, but I would be remiss not to bring up having you on the stage here. Of course, October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and you do so much phenomenal work in raising awareness and working for that cause. I just wanted to ask you, how are things going with the work, and are there any upcoming initiatives or anything you wanted to shine a light on this month?
It's our 50th anniversary at the Special Olympics, and we have a big event in Washington, D.C. at the end of November. And one of the adjuncts of the Special Olympics is a campaign we crafted after the World Winter Games in Idaho almost 10 years ago now, called Spread the Word to End the Word. And what Spread the Word to End the Word hopes to accomplish is to encourage people to use maybe alternate language from the R word, which is retard and retarded. Because when that word is used and it puts down a community that's never done anything to anybody, and if you don't know about it, then maybe now you do, and maybe let's go with that. If you do know that the words retard and retarded are they hurt us, they put us down, then you knowingly do that, then you're a coward, and I want to talk to you. But with most people who don't know, and I just bring it up, and I say, maybe there's a better way to say that. Yeah. And of course the answer is, say what? I say, you just said the party was retarded. Is that what you meant? Or you mean it was a crazy party? Or did you mean it was less than normal? What do you mean? Yeah. Because if you insert the N-word or any other negative language about African Americans or Jews or Italians or the gay and lesbian community, if you substitute that word for the R word, see how that goes. There'll be a consequence. There'll be a tax, a TAX on that language. And for our community, because you're picking on a population that can't return serve, that's not what we do. You've picked the perfect target of cowardice to aim your vitriol at. And so we hope to move that needle, and it's baby steps, because that word is so sanitized and it populates the entire language that we use right now. It's baby steps towards maybe being more inclusive and more elevating with our language than that. And that's what we aspire to do.
And you guys make amazing strides in doing it. Honestly, I was reading up on all the work that you've done. When you encounter that word, conversationally, obviously you can address it. Do you ever see that instance or find yourself having to have this conversation when you're looking at a script or looking at a new project and you come across it? Do you engage it in the exact same way and talk to those people as well?
Sure, it will be a reason for me not to do your film.
Yeah.
But my friend Johnny Cusack did the greatest thing, who's practically an uncle to my son. They were doing Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yes.
And Johnny was the producer-writer of it, and they had a bunch of magical actors on that. And for some reason, the R word was really in vogue. I don't know, I'd have to IMDb it, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And the actors would come in, and there was very improvisational set, and a lot of them that would be retarded this, retarded that. And John took a couple actors aside, and he said, what you're doing is great. It's really funny, but just know that the takes where you put in the R word aren't going to be in the film. So use it as much as you want, but those magic takes you're doing, where the button on it is, and I'm a retard, that's not going to be in the film. So it was so passive-aggressive and genius. He was just like, just use that as much as you want. Definitely use that, but it's not going to be in the film. Because all you got to tell an actor is like, all that really great stuff you're doing, it's going to be on the floor.
No one will see it. Yeah.
It's great.
Wow.
It's genius. So I've stolen that.
That is brilliant. Wow. All right, we're going to turn it over to the audience. The last thing I'll say before we do is remind everyone that October 31st, Stand Against Evil's back on IFC.
Halloween.
It's Halloween. There's no better way to celebrate than to watch the show. And then tonight, if you're in the area, Comic-Con, you guys are going to be there 6:30, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're screening a couple episodes with the fans. That couldn't be better.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It's going to be tight.
That's going to be so amazing. All right, speaking of fans, we got some microphones in the room. Let's get some questions. First one's right here. Come on down.
Hello. So I was wondering if you had any particularly funny stories between you and the cast from backstage while filming.
From backstage?
From behind the scenes, sorry.
On Stan?
Yeah.
Well, Janet one time, who plays Evie, the first year she was killed by a witch, and then, or she's below a witch, and a witch is right above her, and they ran a tube. If you're the camera looking here, they ran a tube up the actor's mouth, so it was downstage, and out the tube would come this witch vomit. And the special effects guy loaded up the witch vomit, which is whatever you think it is. It's gross. And the proximity of the witch's mouth to Janet was maybe 18 inches. And on action, they're already there, and the witch opens her mouth, and we can't see it, and it was perfect. The vomit starts to come out on Janet. And there was too much, and she started to drown. So Janet got waterboarded with witch vomit. And she's choking, and everybody thought she was acting really well, and she was choking on witch vomit. And it's all Dana, we chopped that into the show. And so Janet was a pretty good sport about inhaling witch vomit.
Do you guys, thank you for that question, do you guys ever find humor in just the absurdity? Like if you're sitting around between a take and David Koechner is sitting in a giant moth costume and you're just waiting quietly, patiently, like you have to at some point take a moment to just observe the absurdity of what you guys are doing. In that moment, does that ever hit you? Like you get a wave of that, of like, what is this?
Yeah, but Atlanta, which is a great city, but in the summer when we're there, it's so miserable, it's so hot that and people just want to crank through this stuff. And it's such an infinitely finite amount of time that we're shooting. There's not that much sitting around.
There's not a lot, yeah.
And so, and like when we have guest stars like David Koechner, they rotate in and out in 2 or 3 days. Yeah. And so we shoot them and wrap them. Yeah, and then the next great actor comes in. And I wish I could travel more of my friends to Atlanta. We don't have the budget. But this year, one of the takeaways from the first 2 seasons was that there is a very rich pool of actors in Atlanta, not like New York and Los Angeles. And so we flew more of our friends in, again, for a couple days. And then we can't house them and give them per diem and all this stuff. That's it. And so that was a huge takeaway, and it yielded profound dividends this year, having really A-list actors like Koechner come in and crush it.
Maria Bamford, I think.
Yeah, Maria came in, and she's the scariest thing on the planet. I did an animated show for PBS with Maria for maybe 7 years called Word Girl, which is a kid empowerment show about language. And, we were voices for a cartoon. And she's this lovely, very meek voice thing, and she's a voiceover magician, but everything's always right back in here. And then she came down to standing, and she came down, and she played this really evil nurse. I was like, girl, I didn't know that was in there.
Oh, my God, yeah.
What was that?
That's...
Woo!
It's unbelievable what she can do. We got a couple more. Let's do our next one right here in the front. Go for it.
Hi, yeah, you were mentioning the relationship between Stan and Evie being the crux of the show, and I was wondering, Season 2 deals a lot with broken trust between the two of Stan keeping secrets. How does that play with Season 3 with their relationship going forward?
Well, it's a really good question, because the way... as I suggested, that the only way Stan and Evie can get through this portal being open was to embrace their own personal hells and chart a course back to this place. And so what Dana decided with Stan was that, and this feeds into your question, is that everything he's ever done in his life, every decision he's ever made, every action he's ever taken, every stubborn position or opinion he's ever posited has been wrong. So now he has to go the opposite way. Can he? Will he? Does he have the equipment, the wherewithal, the cerebral power? Can he do the opposite of everything he's ever done before? Call action. Put me in that scene. Call action.
Can't wait. What do we got? One more? We'll do one more? Okay, last question is right here. Come on down.
Hi. So I'm kind of wondering, coming from a network television show like Scrubs, which was on ABC and NBC, and then moving to IFC, I'm wondering how you like cater your material differently, or like what's that process like moving to maybe a more niche network rather than broadcast?
The biggest difference I can say right off the bat is the language gets to be a little edgier. So you can say SHIT like 3 times in an episode. And all of this is all metered. And you can say the Lord's name in vain. And you can say, like, the edgiest thing we could always say on Scrubs, and we did all the time, was you're an ass face. And you're allowed to say that on network TV. So we beat ass face into the ground. I must have called Zach an ass face, and Donald an ass face, and I never called Judy an ass face. But we beat ass face into the ground. Now on Stan, on IFC, because we're on at 10 o'clock, and then the content is consumed, after that differently, not in primetime television, the language gets to be a little edgier. And it gets to be bloodier. Like Scrubs for a hospital comedy, Billy Lawrence, who was the executive producer of Scrubs, used to say, nothing kills a joke quicker than blood. And it's very hard, but Stan, we're cracking jokes while Janet's being vomited on by a witch. And so it's a little, if that's edgy, it's a little edgier.
Thank you for that.
Cheers,
it's crazy.
thanks for
Donald was here yesterday,
He's the
and
best.
he's so amazing. We were in the middle of another interview, and he walked in while I was on stage with Dave Boreanaz,
Best.
and Donald jumped up in the window and just started screaming at us in the middle of our live interview. His energy is through the roof. He's unbelievable.
Donald's an unlimited talent.
He really is.
Unlimited.
Do you? It's been. I couldn't believe I was looking at the Twitter. It's been 17 years. Do you guys all keep touch? Is there like a group text? Is there a? Are you just
No, but we
passing?
see each other from time to time. The only reason I say no, sadly, but it's also happy for actors, is that everyone's had a really good run after Scrubs, and so Neil's been on The Middle for 10 years, and now he has a new show coming out. Kenny's been doing something. Sarah's on Roseanne. Zach has directed a couple of movies and had a show. Donald's the hardest working actor in television. So people their lives are moving on, and when we catch up, it's always right where we left off. It's not, why didn't you call me? I hate friends with the why didn't you call me. It's like, well, because my life is happening. Why isn't yours?
Exactly.
And so it's the former. It's when I saw Donald yesterday somewhere in town, we just started dancing. That's what we did. I don't know why. We started dancing. Of course I was dancing with Donald.
Naturally, that's what you do. You see Donald, you dance.
I didn't know how else to express my love.
That seems like a pretty appropriate way. Well, I want to thank you so much. We got to wrap things up. Everybody, thank you for your questions and for being such an awesome audience. Congratulations again on season 3. I damn well better see you back here for season 4, sir. It's always so nice to have you. All right, yeah, me too. It's so great to have you here. Halloween night, it comes back. Stand Against Evil season 3 on IFC. Everybody, please, ridiculous amount of noise for Mr. John C. McGinley. All right, here.